T, thank you for the request. I think I've briefly talked about this before, but let's get into it. How did the Emperor meet Mortarion? Mortarion, as great as his design is, and I love everything his legion is about, I truthfully believe that he had one of the worst reasons to fall to chaos. I've talked about the history of Mortarion's upbringing, that on his planet, it was overrun by what was the overlords, and Mortarion, of course, wanted to rebel against the overlords alongside his adopted father. And while leading the rebellion, it would all eventually lead to the point where all that was left was to take the castle to which his adopted father was on. But on top of this mountain, it was nearly impossible to get through the gaseous, poisonous smoke clouds that lined its surfaces. They were constantly experimenting with various different means of gas masks and other protective gear in order to properly ascend the mountain without experiencing any failures. To give you an idea as to how toxic these fumes were, not even Mortarion would be able to sustain breathing up there. Despite his Primarch-like resilience, even when he was living with his adopted father, he had to live halfway down the mountain in order to properly live. If not, the noxious fumes would eventually lead to his demise. So amidst the rebellion, Mortarion was returning to his camp, and he would be made aware that a stranger would appear, and the stranger was none other than the Emperor. Although Mortarion didn't necessarily know who he specifically was. The Emperor offered his help with the technology necessary in order to defeat Mortarion's adopted father, and of course Mortarion and his famous pride would get the better of him. Mortarion would said, "I don't need no stinking help from you or anybody, I can do this myself." And despite the Emperor offering help, as well as for Mortarion to join his ranks, the Emperor would then offer a wager. Should Mortarion successfully defeat his adopted father, he would leave him be. Should Mortarion fail and the Emperor prove to be successful, then Mortarion would join the ranks of the many legions at the disposal of the Emperor. So then, Mortarion would take his chances and try to slay his adopted father himself. One can imagine or already assume how that went, but upon arriving to the front doorstep of his adopted father, the two would come to trade blows, but eventually the gaseous fumes would prove too powerful for Mortarion's Primarch resilience, and he couldn't do both, sustain the poison that was slowly infecting his body while also fighting his adopted father. So while Mortarion lied, reflecting about how his pride got the better of him, as well as he was about to lose his own life, the Emperor would step in and slay the Overlord. And Mortarion may be many things, but he was a man of his word, and would eventually join the many legions of the Emperor. This is exactly how he would become the Primarch of the 14th Legion, but it's also the reason why he would eventually turn traitor. He blamed the Emperor for taking what was rightfully his revenge, as well as the life of his own adopted father. Mind you, I personally find this ridiculous because 1, he would have failed, or he didn't. 2, he would have lost his life. 3, he was very well aware that the equipment wasn't ready yet, and despite all the warnings and the signs that he was provided, he still did what he thought he could do and failed, and now he's butthurt about it and wanted to take it out on his own father. The Emperor may in fact be a jerk, and definitely not a great dad, but with all due respect, I would say Mortarion's in the wrong for this one. I know this video was a little bit more casual and not as descriptive in detail, but that's only because I'm fairly certain I already talked about this, but just wanted to cover it again. So T, with that being said, thank you again for the request, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. Drop a comment if there's anything you guys want to hear about next, and as always, remember to follow for more.